Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yanis Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob. On this show, we democratize the film criticism conversation by bringing on fans and critics alike to dig into their personal connection to a current or classic release. You can find more episodes of this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcatchers. You can drop us a review or rating on Apple Podcasts. Really appreciate that. This week, we are here to talk about the 1990 film Darkman, and I am honored to welcome to the show Kevin Smith. Not that Kevin Smith. How often do you get that, first of all?
Oh, gosh, almost every time. I always get people looking up at me from my license like, dude, you look really skinny for... You know. But it happens every once in a while. But I changed my Twitter name just in case.
Yeah, probably a good idea. I mean, he's a cool person. I'm a fan of his. So I mean, if you're gonna get mistaken for someone famous, might as well be someone that seems kind of chill.
Oh, he's very awesome. Have you ever gotten to meet him before?
I have not. I've seen him live. I've seen him. I did Hollywood Babylon when he did that. When he came to Orlando, I'm in Florida, and when he did Jay and Silent Bob Get Old with Jason Mewes, and then when he was touring with the reboot, Jay and Silent Bob reboot, I went to see that as well. So I've seen him live a few times, but I've never actually met him.
Oh, that's very cool. No, in real life, he is like the nicest person on earth.
That's really good to hear.
I remember people like coming away from him from signings and stuff like that, just thinking like he was a huge smartass, but he likes to talk and play and joke with people. So it's like, if you're that kind of person, he's the nicest, sweetest person ever. Yeah. That's nice because they always tell you, you don't want to meet these people you admire or you look up to or whatever, because they rarely live up to it. So it's good to hear that he's he seems very genuine. Like he seems like he is the person he projects himself to be on his podcast and things like that. So that's cool. Yeah, I would say so. In the handful of times that I've met him, I'd say that's pretty much the case. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell people listening a little bit about you, Kevin Smith.
This Kev Smith is still kind of funny, still a huge nut for movies, love the classics. I tend to work more in the mystery science theater field. Nice. So I do a lot more work with them as far as promoting what's going on, running MST3K motivation on Twitter and Facebook, making memes for people, and just keeping the Misties posting what's going on and stuff like that. That's this Kev Smith. Not nearly as cool as that Kevin Smith, but still just as much fun sometimes, just as much of a big dork.
So what is the latest with MST3K, I guess, since that's sort of your wheelhouse? Anything to report? Anything happening?
Yes, they have 2 new shorts coming out pretty soon, thanks to the donations of Misties. They recently had a fundraiser for an organization called MIGSY, which was to help benefit a Native American group, a youth Native American group in Minneapolis that was damaged during the riots. Mm-hmm. And they doubled their fundraiser goal. I want to say twice, maybe they doubled it. But after they reached the goal the first time, Joel already said, yes, we're gonna make 2 new shorts that have never been riffed before. And I will riff them along with Crow and Servo, I believe is going to be the case. And Crow and Servo are going to be played by J. Elvis Weinstein and Bill Corbett.
Nice.
Yeah.
How long have you been involved with all of that? Because I've been aware of MST3K for forever, obviously, because it's been around forever. But I haven't ever really delved into more than a few of the episodes. And so I'm really curious what your experience is in that world and what that's really like, kind of being in the thick of it.
I've been watching, I want to say since maybe 94, when it was still on Comedy Central. But I didn't really delve into it the way that I did, which another way of saying that is basically sticking my foot in the door.
Right.
And saying, I'm here.
That's how you got to do it sometimes.
Until about 2017. I just had some kids. I had 2 kids at that point, and both of which were on the autism spectrum. And the doctor told us that neither one of my kids would talk. The Mystery Science Theater revival came out, and my son really took to that. And he started watching other episodes, and we were watching, I think EGA maybe after the first tour. And my son was just sitting up against the TV and he says, Joel? And Barry was clearly pointing out Joel. And the next thing you know, he's saying Crow and Servo and Jonah. So that really put my heart in the spot that this was even more special. MST is more special than what it was for me growing up, which was still really important and special. But the fact that it helped my son speak when he was told that he was never going to do so was just really special to me. So I basically said, you know what, I need to give back. And that's what I've been trying to do for the last 3 years, is just do what I can to make sure everybody knows about it, Mystery Science Theater, and that it's as funny as it is. It helps people out. It makes everyone feel better. And you laugh the entire time. So it's been a fun ride in the last 3 years. But right now, things are changing a bit. I can't really talk about what I'm doing anymore. But it's really cool because I feel like I'm able to help the show out more in ways that the show needs to be helped out, rather than just being the internet kind of guy that I was.
Right. Yeah. What a great story though, how you got involved with it. That's really beautiful. And I think the thing about what they do that is so fun is that, you know, it always feels like it comes from a place of appreciation of, you know, these ridiculous movies. And yes, they're mocking them, but it's also just like the way that movies bring us together. And it's really kind of celebrating that, as opposed to, you know, you see especially now on the internet, you see a lot of like mean-spirited kind of commentary towards things like nitpicking, and instead of just leaning into how fun movies can be and kind of the communal aspect of it. And I think right now, especially in the pandemic, where movie theaters are just now, some starting to open and some still, you know, closed indefinitely, I think that's something that I miss a lot. You know, this year has been very devoid of that kind of shared experience.
Yeah, and that's true. And I used to work at a movie theater back in from 96 to 98, I think it was. And we were family that worked there. We watched movies alone together before anybody else would get to see them. And that was our little Mystery Science Theater group and having fun. But you don't really get that opportunity anymore, even if you worked at a movie theater, which who does anymore at this point?
Yeah, exactly.
But with the riffs, I mean, those are always an uplifting perspective, I think. Like you said, it brings people together and embracing movies. A lot of people have the misunderstanding that riffs or riffers are just sarcastic and snarky and throwing comments out at a movie and basically kicking it while it's down. Oh, here's a bad movie, let's kick it some more. That's really not the case. If you watch Mystery Science Theater, a lot of the movies that they've riffed are movies that some people have seen many times before, not riffed in the theater on VHS or what have you. And here, yes, in this day and age, it becomes a lot more cheesier, a lot less acceptable than what it was back then. And really the show and the writers, they embrace those kind of movies because they grew up with them as well. So they're not throwing snark at it. They're actually enjoying watching that cheesy movie, and they're making the observations and the commentary about it. If anything is ever sarcastic or snarky, it's probably from one of the robots that's supposed to be having that character. But otherwise, it's all just good-natured ribbing and fun. And who could ask for more than that in this day and age right now? Right.
It's finding a way to enjoy movies that most people would have already dismissed and just kind of thrown away too. And that's, kind of showing that even movies that are, not necessarily the best quality production or all that, that are kind of obviously the low budget end and all of that, the B movies and stuff, that there's still enjoyment to be had from pretty much just about every cinematic experience. And I like that in that way. I feel like there is sort of an ongoing kind of positive thread throughout all of their work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that they've breathed life into or kept life breathed into is the Hercules franchise. Everything that they've punched down on Hercules has, like, I remember all those old Steve Reeves movies. My dad used to watch those all the time. So I had no idea growing up that those were supposed to be cheesy films, or if they were at the time. But, you keep seeing them now and people still know, oh, okay, Steve Reeves was Hercules. They're not just hearing it from the Rocky Horror Picture Show in that one line, but people still have that familiarity with older heroes and classics and things like that. And I think that has that usefulness too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You breathe life into movies that wouldn't otherwise have it.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I mean, Darkman was a box office success, sort of, kind of, enough to spawn 2 straight-to-video sequels and a cult following. But I wanted to talk, before we get into the movie, I wanted to talk about Sam Raimi as a filmmaker. So where are you generally on Sam Raimi? I think I know the answer to this, but where do you put Sam Raimi's filmography, and what do you consider some of his best films? And then we'll talk about where Darkman. I'm going to start pronouncing it Darkman. I like that. Where Darkman lands within his career.
Oh, that's a big, broad, open question. Yeah. So firstly, I want to say there was only one Sam Raimi movie that I didn't like that didn't involve Spider-Man. I really think he's a unique and soulful director. I like what he does for the most part. I don't like what happens when studios get involved with his work or his thought process, because his charm is having his own shtick, his own thing to the movies, the way he films, the way that in the same wheelhouse that the Three Stooges did. No one else makes a movie that way anymore and makes it interesting, but he still does. His ideas are just great, and the people that he works with constantly are equally creative. So, I mean, I love Sam Raimi.
Is it Oz the Great and Powerful, the one you're talking about? I was wondering to throw that out there. It's not. Okay, interesting.
No. I actually liked Oz the Great and Powerful. It didn't bother me nearly that much. Like Return to Oz was a little bit more offensive if you want to get back to it. But
right.
I still like Return to Oz too.
Yeah, I do too. I grew up with that one.
It was a simple plan. That was the only one of his movies where I was kind of like, this is different. And that's fine. It wasn't a bad movie.
Yeah.
It wasn't Evil Dead for me. It wasn't Army of Darkness. It wasn't Darkman, anything like that. So I didn't have the appreciation for it when it came out, I think.
Okay.
Or wasn't willing to have that appreciation for it. Well made. It just wasn't my thing.
I think he's had an interesting progression in his career too. Because I was watching, obviously, Darkman for this episode, and I was looking at his filmography and really pinpointing how clearly Darkman is a pivot point from Evil Dead to Spider-Man. Like, it feels like, you might watch Evil Dead 2 and then see Spider-Man and be like, how did this guy get from here to here? Like, you still see his stylistic touches and his personality put in it and all that, but it feels like a different genre in a way. And I feel like Darkman splits the difference, that it's sort of part the aesthetic of Evil Dead and part leaning towards the superhero and the comic booky stuff. So how do you feel about where Darkman sits within, right between basically Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, and then he starts doing the studio stuff, The Quick and the Dead, A Simple Plan, For Love of the Game, things like that?
Yeah. I would say Darkman definitely is that turning point. I want to say emotionally for him, that was probably the turning point for him, because Universal was so against a lot of the things that his vision for what Darkman would be, or who he would be rather. I think that movie was necessary at the time. It opened a door for him. And you want to say, okay, that was 1990, 1991. You weren't hearing his name again in huge success until 2000 with Spider-Man for the most part. But that's really not true. I want to say Darkman really kicked open the door for him to do a lot of other creative things, starting with Briscoe County Jr.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think Briscoe County Jr. was really that step from going from your Evil Dead horror type movies to more heroic type. And I think Darkman was really his way of saying, yes, I can do this. He always wanted to do it. He kept getting turned down for The Shadow and Batman, but he had a story to tell. He had a character that he wanted to make, a franchise type deal or the hero-ish type movie, like you said. And he did it. He got a lot of flack from the studio. And I think that put a real sour taste in his mouth. And I want to say it was TV that really kept him going towards that more heroic aspect. But I don't think he would have done that at all without the experience from Darkman.
And I also like the fact that this movie sort of leverages the success of the 89 Batman, and it's in kind of, there's, I think people forget there was like a moment in the early 90s where comic book movies were starting to kind of, there was Hollywood starting to churn out a bunch of them. Like before we got to Spider-Man and X-Men and all that stuff, there was Batman, there was Dick Tracy, there was Ninja Turtles, and this sort of, not based on a comic book, but one of the best comic book movies, not based on a comic book, basically. And it falls right within, like you said, The Shadow, which is something he wanted to do, which was made into a movie a few years later. And then I think kind of that trend fizzled out. But it's funny to think that this was almost like the Sam Raimi comic book movie that started to keep that trend going, and how it kind of didn't, in a way. And because I think it's just because this is not a mainstream movie. Like you couldn't, I mean, I saw this as a kid, but rewatching it now and having my own kid, I was like, wow, I probably shouldn't have seen this as a kid. This is like really violent. like you don't realize it as a kid. You're like, oh, that's just what happens. He twists the guy's finger and like his face is all like dipped in acid or whatever. Like it's just very visceral. And I think that's kind of what I mean when I say that it's the balance between Evil Dead and Spider-Man, in that it's the heroic, origin story. Technically, he has abilities, which we'll get into, which they have a big scene basically highlighting, look, he's got superpowers. But it's still grimy, it's still dirty, it still has the Dutch angles, it's still shot in that way that makes it feel very chaotic in the Evil Dead style. And I love the way that he wraps in, an homage to like Universal Horror and Phantom of the Opera and Hunchback. Like there's a lot of that going on. Like there's a ton of influences behind this movie, and I think that's a big part of why it works so well, is sort of a pastiche of all these different genres. Agreed.
And it's because he has, like you said, that love for so many things, and he takes inspiration from so many film genres. Most specifically, like you said, the Dutch angles. He is famous for using those in movies, and he uses them properly. So good. I loved them in Darkman. To me, it was more effective than when Quentin Tarantino tried to have that similar effect with Kill Bill, where anytime Uma Thurman would see one of the 5 Venoms or 5 Vipers, you'd hear the womp, 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 womp. You can get that from you get that vibe from Darkman when he starts to have his synapse misfires and whatnot, but it fits better and it feels better. It's not over the top, and it just works out okay. You want to say this is a cheesy movie and it's way over the top, but it fits and it works out okay. Now, what you were saying as far as the other superhero movies in that era, let's go over the big ones that we looked for. I mean, we would get, at that point, just starting to get Hero magazine and Wizard magazine, and they would have spotlights on the things that were coming out. And I remember one of the biggest spotlights they had was Roger Corman's Fantastic Four wanting to come out.
Oh yeah.
And I was so nuts for that. And we had no expectations at that time. So the movie could have come out and still be held in a higher regard than what the other 3 movies were, which I think it technically still is. But then Captain America, The Punisher, the TV Incredible Hulk movies were actually the only okay comic book movies that really came out prior to, and then even after Darkman for a little while. But Darkman, I can't exclude it from the comic genre. It's not fair to say that the boom started in 98 with Blade. I'd say the boom probably could have started in 90 with Darkman. Darkman was so good and had that vibe of that summer comic book blockbuster. But what was the first thing that you remember happening in the comic stores after Darkman came out? Marvel made a book of it.
Yeah, I did see that. So, there's actually been several of them. It seems like they've really kept the franchise alive in comic book form and in novel form. Like I didn't even realize that until I did research, because that there was so much coverage of like that Darkman had been growing so much since the sequels, which I did see. I actually have the DVD trilogy box set with the 2 straight-to-video sequels, which are, not very good, but it's more Darkman, so I'll take it. It's pretty much my attitude with those.
I don't think I've seen any more than 5 minutes of part 2. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that I've seen part 3 at all.
Yeah. Part 3 is the one with Jeff Fahey as the villain and subtitled Die Darkman Die.
Oh, okay. So maybe that's the one I've seen then.
Yeah, maybe. The second one, The Return of Durant, which I almost kind of admire their confidence. I mean, like, people are going to know who Durant is. Everybody's going to remember that, right? Not just the diehards. But quick tangent. He just wakes up. He was in a coma, even though his helicopter exploded, and he doesn't even have a scratch on him. He's not disfigured, nothing. And it's just like, okay, well, this is how we're rolling with it. It's just like pretending that didn't happen. Even though they show footage of it, they showed archive footage of the first movie in the beginning of the second one with the explosion and everything, and it's just like, yeah, we're gonna blow right past that. I'm like, all right, sure.
He jumped.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, that's what happened. He jumped out of the helicopter. But yeah, no, he is probably one of the best filmmakers at capturing the precise tone of what comic books are like in their essence, and keeping things over the top, keeping things campy, still having you emotionally invested in the characters and in the arcs, but not like the Nolan thing, which I love the Dark Knight movies, but they're very self-serious. They're very, earnest and upfront about that. And almost try and like ashamed, sweeping under the rug, like don't pretend this is not about a comic book. And he doesn't lean so much into the whatever comic book silliness, whatever that means. Where it still feels like you're still invested. You're not just like, it's like cartoonish, but in a fun way, not in a way that makes you feel like it's insulting your intelligence, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Like I said, even though it's supposed to be a campy movie, and it is, it feels okay. Like, wow, this is fun. It doesn't feel like you're watching a Steven Seagal movie where there's, no one ever reloads and the guy's never actually in any peril. For as campy as the blue screens are, or the green screens, or whatever, you had that emotional connection to it. Like, oh gosh, he's really flying through that helicopter, hanging from the helicopter through the skies and stuff. It made you feel something other than bored. It made you feel fun, and you did feel a little bit of that adrenaline thrill. It made you laugh some. It was well balanced. And it fits with Danny Elfman's score as well. Everything was just great about Darkman.
And I believe this was the beginning of the Raimi-Elfman partnership that carried into Spider-Man and a bunch of other things too.
I think so. I think so.
Which, what a perfect fit that is. I actually love the score to this movie. I've listened to it when I'm writing. I just, on Spotify or whatever. And it's kind of built, I think I had the, one of the Danny Elfman like compilations from in a Darkened Theater or whatever, one of those he had a couple of them, and it had the suite, I think, from Darkman. I would listen to that a lot. I love the music in this as well, so I'm glad we're just throwing that out there. It sounds like we're pretty much into the movie, so I feel like let's just transition into a little bit of the trailer for Darkman right now.
They destroyed everything he had, all that he loved, everything that he was. Now, crime has a new enemy, and justice has a brand new face.
I was afraid that you wouldn't want me anymore.
Of course I still want you.
The good news is that I know who's behind our little troubles of late. Finish it.
He has the power to look like any man.
These two are both sons of witches!
But he is unlike any man.
I gotta tell you something about me.
He's a cockroach. You think you kill him? And he pops up someplace else.
In the darkest hour.
Julie, who's the real monster here?
There's a light that shines on every human being. But one. From director Sam Raimi. Darkman.
That was a little bit of the trailer for Darkman from 1990, obviously directed by Sam Raimi. So another thing I thought was really interesting about this is that the marketing campaign was really hyping up who is Darkman, like the big mystery behind it, because I think, as you were mentioning, the studio didn't really have much faith in this movie. And it's unclear in my research whether Raimi was satisfied with this movie. It didn't seem like it, but it also feels like his vision is pretty retained on screen. So I wonder, do you have any insight into what Raimi really wanted this to be, and if he's pleased with the outcome?
He was not. So an article, I just read an article, the studio forced the editor basically out. He said he had a mental breakdown, but the studio basically forced the editor out, and they brought their own guy in to cut the movie down to what they wanted. And I want to say they cut it down to 85 minutes. It didn't follow the story that he wanted. It didn't show the character behind Peyton that he really wanted. He wanted Peyton to be a man inside of a monster's body.
Right.
What we saw in the theaters was not what Universal cut. What happened is the film was about to go to print, or was about to get locked and go to print. And I want to say it was Bob Tappert that asked him, "You're not happy with this. I'm not happy with this. Why are we sending this in?" Bob Tappert convinced Raimi to basically not lock the film that Universal had. What they did is they spent the next 48 hours, Saturday and Sunday, re-editing the movie in a way that was going to make Universal and Sam sort of happy. And we got to see more of Sam's vision. And he didn't tell them. And then he locked the film, and they found out after they made a bunch of prints of it. So they were pretty unhappy with Sam Raimi after that.
Good for him.
I think so, because it was a better film.
Yeah.
And with all the talk of the Snyder cut or whatever else cut that you want to see of whatever superhero movie that was failed from DC, I would be more interested in seeing a Sam Raimi cut of Darkman. Like, give me 2 hours of whatever his vision was.
Right. Hell yeah. And you know what? The funny thing is too, that if I'm sort of guessing correctly, I feel like the scenes that they would have cut out would have been a lot of his freak out moments. So like when he's reacting superly emotional. So I don't know if that includes the pink elephant scene, which we'll get to, which is one of the masterworks in the movie, I would say, is the whole, like, when I was watching it last night and it got to the fair scene, I just said to myself, like, oh fuck, here we go. right into this shit. And then the scene in what I'm going to call his dark cave, where he has the little outburst towards the cat, and he's like, "Come here, I should wear a little hat," and he puts on the funnel and does see the dancing freak, just $5, that whole thing. I loved those scenes as a kid, and I think those scenes are the ones that make sure that you're on his side, because he is very much sort of an anti-hero, and that he is. He has this rage issues and everything after everything he's been through. And we have that great exposition scene with the doctor played by Jenny Agutter, I think how you say her name, I forget. Where she's saying he's got no pain, amplified emotions, and you get the whole "they took my hands" thing when him freaking out about that, which I love all that stuff. I think that's the emotional undercurrent of the movie. You take that out and it feels really hollow.
And I think that's what Universal wanted, was like, this is all too much story. People want action, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, I disagree. I want to see all that. And Universal, I could go off on a huge tangent about Universal and Warner Brothers, but Universal is so far removed from what beyond the popcorn audience wants. Mm-hmm. They could sit and make their explosion movies, their stunt car driving movies, or whatever else. But when it comes to a well thought out film, you're not likely going to get it from Universal half the time. If something that expresses emotion, that's fun for everybody, or that is a director's choice, you're not going to get that from Universal. No.
Well, I mean, right now their main franchises are Fast and Furious and Jurassic World, which, I kind of enjoyed those. Those are okay, but I wouldn't say that they're great stories or that those are actual characters or anything like that. They're just banking on nostalgia with those pretty much. So I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I'm not really going to argue against it.
Yeah, I just between them and Warner Brothers ruining every franchise they possibly have, I'm just like, I don't have anything nice to say about either one of you. But they, Universal, if they would have just left it to what he wanted and let it focus on those character pieces, I think that would have made Darkman even more successful, compounding with the marketing gimmicks that they did. Mm-hmm. Because Darkman is an understandable character. He's not like Batman. Everyone understands Batman wants justice for his parents. Not everyone understands what it's like to be a billionaire and a ninja and things like that. So whatever. Darkman is a lot more realistic. Everyone's been hurt before. Everyone's had their heart broken and longed for somebody else. And everyone has felt ugly, has been depressed. I think I was 10 when Darkman came out. You're able to understand Darkman because you can't control your emotions. You don't understand them any more than he did. Mm-hmm. As an adult, you could look back and you could envy Darkman because he doesn't have to obey those emotions. You learn how to keep that rage knit as an adult. You got to bite your lip and everything else and son of a bitch under your breath. No, if you're Darkman, you can get that fucking elephant. So as an adult, you could aspire to want to be that anti-hero. As a kid, I think you're able to understand that hero. Like, I have all that rage too. I get it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, ultimately, he just wants to be normal. He just wants to fit in. He tries to, it takes him, I did the math. I think it's like 23 days or whatever for his own face to generate.
Yeah,
based on, but like he has the first thing he does when he sets up his lair is setting up the digitization of his face because even the photo was jacked up.
Yeah, that was messed up.
Yeah, it's like, geez, man. He's like, I don't have a photo of myself to work from. But he just wants to get back to his old life. He wants, even in the beginning, like he's the one asking Julie to marry him, like kind of pleading with her. Like normally you see the woman is more being like, let's settle down, blah, blah, blah. So just even there, like it's a lovely reversal of that character. And I think just from the first few minutes before the lab, the lab destruction and all that stuff that happens, I think you really buy into Peyton Westlake as a character. And then, 30 minutes in, it turns into essentially a revenge story, I just did an episode not long ago on Machete and Machete Kills and the whole grindhouse thing. And watching this now so close to that, I didn't really realize as a kid, because I wasn't aware of that phenomenon at the age of, 7 or whenever this came out. I don't think I saw it right when it came out, but like probably a couple years later. This is very much sort of a grindhouse-esque movie. It's a tight 90 minutes. It's like very gratuitous with the violence and all that stuff. So it feels like it has elements of some of that. And I don't know. I think he harnesses that in a really visceral, powerful, and like tangible way. And I think a lot of that starts with Liam Neeson. So we should probably start about him first of all. Everybody just in 2000s was Liam Neeson, action star. And I'm like, yeah, did you guys see Darkman as a kid? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I would get the same thing from people. Even my wife, I think at one point before she'd seen Taken, she was like, Liam Neeson was the main character in this and he's a superhero. I'm like, yes, he's awesome. Like, his deliveries are awesome. His one-liners are great. And she watched it and she's like, wow, that really was Liam Neeson being a superhero. Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's too bad it took from whenever Darkman to Taken to come out that he got the respect that he needs, because he was amazing in this. He was, like you said, he was a lovely human being that you could actually sit and watch a movie about Peyton Westlake prior to the accident. And then, just that twisted turn of fate, that seeing what he has to deal with, where he gets an injury almost akin to what happened to, what was his name? Phineas Gage. Mm-hmm. Do you remember him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he had the railroad spike blown through his jaw, and it came out straight through the top of his head, and it blew apart his, I want to say his hypothalamus, the middle section of the brain. Mm-hmm. So his brain couldn't function properly. And I want to say this might have been part of the experience, or part of the inspiration for Darkman's issues, was Phineas had the same issue of not being able to function properly in social crowds. He had to take himself away or keep himself away from everybody, or people had to keep him away from public because he would freak out randomly. And Peyton, again, you have to cry for this man, because not only does he have only 99 minutes each time he wants to go out into the sun with the woman that he loves, that he just longs to be with more than anything else, but then he's got to deal with his mental issues that could happen within those 99 minutes. So he's a really sympathetic character that can't do much socially. Mm-hmm. But again, to your point, once he puts that cloak on, or takes his mask off rather, he could do whatever he wants. He's physically free to do whatever he wants, but it's not what he wants. That power is not what he wants. He wants Julie, of course. Right. And like you said, his old life back.
The concept of the 99-minute masks just in and of itself is so ingenious. Just the fact that, yeah, you can go out, you can pretend to be other gangsters, you can turn them against each other, that whole thing, which I love that whole segment of the movie, that whole middle, half hour, that whole, where he's taking on, oh, there goes Ted Raimi. Oh, Polly's flying. Have a nice flight, Polly. All of that stuff. I loved all that stuff, especially with Durant, which we'll get to in a second. But it's just that concept alone, it really makes me wish that there were either more of these with Liam Neeson, or this is, and I hope this isn't blasphemous when I say this, but this feels like a property that if you're going to do an extension of some kind of, franchise or whatever, I would like more of Darkman. This concept has so much potential to be an ongoing thing if they wanted to. If Raimi was able to do something like they just did with Ash versus Evil Dead, and we got 30 episodes more of Bruce Campbell fighting Deadites, if they were able to do something like that with the character of Darkman, there is so much potential and so much material you can work with, just with, like we said, with that dichotomy between Darkman and Peyton Westlake, with the 99-minute masks, with that, and the straight-to-video sequels sort of try and do something with that, but it's just not very successful in execution. What are your thoughts on whether they should try and do something else with this franchise? I mean, obviously it wouldn't be this, but it would be, I feel like there's more there.
There's potentially a lot more there if it was given the proper respect.
Yeah.
But again, all going back to Universal, any franchise, a successful franchise they have screwed the pooch as hard as they could, mm-hmm. and as dry as they could. You look at their monster movies, they've been screwing those up for the last 22 years. They're Universal classics, to the mm-hmm. point where they have to dump their idea every so many years to restart. We live in a society right now, or a film society, that they are afraid to put out anything that's untested, or that they feel is untested.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that Universal would want another major Darkman blockbuster, but I think if Raimi was able to get those rights back and do it with his own production company, I think he'd have a hell of a reboot on his hands. If a movie was to be rebooted, Darkman mm-hmm. would be a good one to do a reboot for. Not RoboCop, where they missed the point altogether. Darkman is a damn good movie to reboot that still is relevant. It's not time period necessary outside of needing real science and whatever. Mm-hmm. So they could redo it now. I'd still greatly enjoy it. They could reboot it. They could have a franchise, and as long as Sam Raimi had say so in it, you could still have that underlying character of Peyton Westlake being this tragic man wanting to be and not being able to. So I think it would be perfect if Universal actually gave it a chance or gave up the rights.
It's funny that you mentioned RoboCop, because I didn't make note of the obvious similarities between RoboCop and Darkman, in that they were essentially both really, good men at the beginning who are victimized by criminals, and then, become something totally different, have to adjust to being, either completely disfigured or half machine, more than half machine. He's basically just like a head and a spinal cord at that point. It's been a while since I've gone back and rewatched the original RoboCop, but yeah. So with the way that the violence, the intensity of the violence as well, and just they feel like it feels cut from the same cloth as Darkman, very much so. Yeah, and at least the original anyway. The first two, I'd give it. The new one, no. Never give that a shot. No, Verhoeven's for sure. I really liked the similarities, and like you said, the violence they're all practical effects. It's not CGI, so it gives you that gross out factor of that's real. That's another one of the Grindhouse features I think that you mentioned is like that. It gives it that charm, Grindhouse charm, the more practical latex and blood effects. And even when I don't know if we could do that today, though. I don't know if Hollywood allow something like that to be done today. I would love it if they did. Hell, I would prefer a practical effects reboot to a CGI reboot of anything. Mm-hmm. And even. But just because of the way the movie is campy, even when it is, stop motion, like with the hands getting burnt up or whatever, it still looks cool. It ages well. And for some reason, stop motion ages better than CG. And I guess that is because ultimately they are working from something tangible. It's just you know what I mean? It adds to the vibe. It adds to the sort of, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but because I've gone back and we still love. Like that. Yeah, it's why we still love Ray Harryhausen movies, no matter how goofy those may be. You always want to sit and watch it because, darn it, those monsters look cool. Yeah. And the same thing with the hand. His hand being burnt and then typing, that was just so neat looking. It reminded me of Ash's evil hand. Yeah, absolutely. But stepped up a bit. I liked it. It was just a neat effect. And like you said, you really can't beat stop motion on a large scale. Mm-hmm. Too many people enjoy it. And this it used it right. He doesn't overuse those things, and I think that's another one of his aspects that work. Is he uses the special talents that he has just in minor doses, and it's like the high point in a song that makes a song perfect almost. Yeah, I think so too. I want to also, since we're talking about the performances, Frances McDormand, 2-time Oscar winner. Obviously, this was the first thing I'd really seen her in as a kid. Mm-hmm. She does a lot with the material she's given here. I mean, she's mostly the supportive girlfriend, that kind of thing. But I mean, I think she brings a lot to it, and you sort of, I don't know. How do you feel about her performance in this? Because I think she does a good job with what she has to do. I think is a nice way of putting it. I think so. Yeah. I think so. I can't necessarily think of anyone else necessarily doing a better job or being, who would have been perfect for that. No, I really like Frances McDormand. Apparently Julia Roberts was like up for it or whatever, and then left to do Pretty Woman. And I don't know if that would have worked as well here for some reason. She just doesn't have the same gravitas. No, she doesn't. And with no disrespect to her, I think Fran's a much better actress. I think her roles are funnier in a lot of ways. I think her characters you're more able to get into than Julia Roberts. Mm-hmm. Julia Roberts plays Julia Roberts. I don't always see her playing other characters. Right. But yeah, Frances and Sam had a lot of creative differences, I believe, on this one, because she thought Julie should be one person and Sam wanted her to act another way for the movie to be what he wanted. And they had to come to a common ground. And from what I understand, Liam Neeson was the one that kind of settled that between them. With their theater work that they'd done, they'd gotten together and said, let's rehash these few scenes, which I think was their love scenes and their conversation scenes, as if we were an actual couple. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what really helped her be a better Julie than someone, say, like Julia Roberts, or gosh, I can't even think of who else was up for the role. They'd reviewed a few people, but Julia Roberts was that big one, like you said. Yeah, but I think I saw that like Demi Moore, Bridget Fonda, Demi Moore, people like that were also testing for it. Yeah. But it feels like I think with Frances McDormand, it feels like they're more on an even playing field, like they're equal partners, as opposed to casting someone much younger than Liam Neeson. Like, I don't know. It feels like this feels like a more real relationship. And I guess a lot of that is, like you said, probably from the way the actors worked on those scenes. And, we don't have a lot of time with them before he turns into Darkman. And then even from that point, the movie does everything it can to make sure that we're not only on his side, but also feeling his pain at the loss of that relationship. I mean, one of the first things he does when he emerges is to try and to find her, and he approaches her and she's scared as shit because
he can't he talk.
Yeah.
Good me,
Julie. Yeah. Great
and then,
moments.
Of course, her and all her tolerance. Get away from me.
Pretty much, essentially, yeah.
That's not how you care for the disabled.
Exactly. But Julie, you know better than that.
That was heart-wrenching. The next worst heart-wrenching scene in a movie like that I could think of off the top of my head is the original Fantastic Four, where the Thing couldn't pick up his wedding ring after his wife leaves it on the bridge. And I was like, heartstrings.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, him trying to go back to her was really cool. The fact that he did keep going back to her was even cooler, because if they would have just said, oh, okay, well, she's afraid of him, so he's going to go be a superhero elsewhere now, that would have been cliche, and that would have been boring, and that would have been an injustice to her character.
Right. Well, since we're on their relationship already, when he does emerge, which, not for nothing, Peyton, but if you're going to reemerge and she thinks you're dead, you show up at a graveyard, like for maximum freak out. I mean,
next time, just say boo.
Yeah, might as well. It's faster. It just gets to the point a little faster. And you can tell the great thing about Neeson's performance is that he looks like Peyton Westlake, but underneath, you can see he is still like unstable, and you could see it in his eyes. Like, he looks crazy. He's trying to hide it from her, but I think he plays that so well.
And his lips and his smile, the crooks of his lips when he's talking, he gets so nervous.
Yeah, exactly. And he's coming up with all this like, oh, I was in therapy. I got to go, all these excuses for why he has to like leave after basically 99 minutes, conveniently enough.
And he's always pleading with her. Oh, I love you so much. I love you so much. And that's part of the damage that happened to him. It's just like with any other mental illness. If you suffer from, say, like bipolar disease, for as much as you suffer, when you have that manic moment, you love just as equally. Mm-hmm. So, and I want to say that the doctor that stabbed him in the leg kind of mentioned that too. That like, outbursts of laughter, outbursts of love, and then the crying and everything else. So, and he blends that when he comes back wearing the mask, all in like almost one sentence. And it's just amazing that he did that with that character.
And you could feel his desperation to tell her the truth, because he's like, Julie, like, what if I was scarred, like horribly disfigured, and he's like, I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel about that. It's a sort of dynamic that something like Deadpool tries to do too, where he comes back and then he's just like, is she going to accept me? That kind of thing. And I think the way that plays out, the way she, he takes off with the pink elephant, which I'd forgotten that there's a moment where he's like turning like the fire escape or whatever on that building, and you still see him cleaning the pink elephant. I'm like, oh, he's really committed to that pink elephant. He won it after all, so technically it is his. But
it's
then she
snuggle buddy.
Yeah, he needs that. He needs something. He needs a hug or something. Jesus. But she follows him back there. And, she realizes what's going on. She sees the face melt, basically, essentially in her hands, like all of that. I love the way that they don't save that reveal for like the very last scene or anything either. Like, I feel like if she had only seen if she had only really realized what was going on when, what is his name? Strack, I guess. Yeah. When he like rips his mask off on the, on the steel beams, I feel like it wouldn't be doing that relationship. It wouldn't make it as compelling or have us as invested as it does the way that Raimi lays it out.
Yeah. She wouldn't, there'd be no justification or reason for her to drop her jaw
right
when Strack rips the mask off and says, "See, who's the real monster here?"
I love his performance too, by the way, Colin Farrell.
Oh, it was so over the top, but at the same time, like, this bad guy just like casually walking across girders and having a good old time like he's drunk. And like, if you take that, you have to stop to think to yourself, this guy is either a madman or actually a supervillain. Okay.
Right. I built it all. That's my favorite moment with him, where he's just like, wow, he's leaning into this like hardcore, and I love it. And that's another example of this movie knowing exactly what it is. Like, Raimi knows exactly the tone he's going for, and and all the performances are so pitch perfect, in line with exactly what he's trying to tell. It's so great. It's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I liked it. And Strack was neat because and this is a problem with a lot of comic book movies, especially Spider-Man movies. Mm-hmm. How do you handle a superhero movie with multiple villains? Most movies don't do that well at all.
Yeah.
They don't manage it well. They will screw up the story for one. One will either screw up the story for the other, or will overshadow the story for the hero. This didn't happen between Strack and Durant. They worked together pretty well as far as characters go. You know, Durant was just as evil, but I think completely opposite of Strack. And I think Strack's flamboyance balanced Durant's psychotic quietness to a point. Mm-hmm. And I liked that about them. And you don't see that in any other superhero movie that I could think of. Yeah,
no, that's true. You need that evil mastermind, the billionaire, the Lex Luthor type, essentially. And he is ultimately boils down to, he is like basically a real estate douche. That's kind of the whole movie. That's the other thing that's so funny about this movie, where all these genre conventions, horror and sci-fi and superhero, all kind of exploding together. It all boils down to that fucking memo with the coffee cup ring on it. And like, I just think that's so funny too, that the whole movie is really about paperwork. It's like, oh, she's got proof of that. And I like that. I don't know. I just like the way that, not one, the way that's telegraphed, and two, the way that that's such a superhero-y, comic booky convention.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost even James Bond like, oh, here's the secret document.
We're going to build something beautiful together. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about the way Julie handled that document? Because like, she really got him messed up.
Yeah, she did. She left it there to hide it, I guess, right?
I think so. Either that or she just forgot it. But like,
it got mixed in with his things maybe in the morning or something.
She's talking about confidential stuff in front of him while he's reading the paper. She's got confidential papers mixed in with his. She goes to the person that she's investigating to tell him, oh, I think I found something on you. It's like, you could talk less, honey. You could talk less.
Well, and then Strack leaves the memo just like sitting out. I forgot that it's just basically on the desk. I thought maybe it was sticking out of a folder or a file or underneath something. No, it's just literally just on top. And she's like, what's this doing here? So he's not that smart either. If as far as discretion with the Belisarius memorandum, which I love how often they love to say that in this movie.
Right. The memorandum.
A memorandum. Awesome. I want to, of course, now get to who I consider probably the MVP of this movie, and that is Larry Drake, R.I.P. Larry Drake, who actually passed away in 2016. He is a blast in this, and I mean, I'm glad. It doesn't make any sense that he came back in the second one, but I'm glad he did, because he is so much fun in the scenes where he's playing Durant, where he's collecting fingers, where when he's playing Westlake as Durant in that scene in Chinatown, all of that. He's got such a presence about him and such a specific delivery that we used to, when I grew up with this movie a lot, like we used to watch this a lot as in my parent, my house. Mm-hmm. So we used to quote this movie Obviously his name's Durant, Robert Durant, and my name is Robert. So like, quoting that Robert G. Durant, that whole thing. He's just one. Do you agree that he is probably the standout performance in this movie? Because I think Durant is so much fun to watch.
I'd say so. The bad guy makes the movie because in this film, because it's his face is the one that you're primarily seeing.
Yeah.
You've got your monster and you see his face to a point, but that's not the evil one. The evil one that you're seeing has this much prettier face, but there's death in his eyes and there's no emotion unless he's angry, and the shit that he does is just so remorseless and over the top that you're just like, you can't help but to love him, almost like Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
Like you said, where he's got the fetish for collecting fingers and here are my points. 1, click. You're like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Number 3, I've got 7 more points. And then the scream that just like transitions right into the title sequence. It's great.
It was, but then I'm kind of like, did the other fingers where there's like gangrene, they didn't hurt so much? Or is like, is the ring finger hurt a lot more than the rest?
Yeah.
But no, he was so cold. I loved him. I really did. I've got a thing for bad guys. There are certain bad guys in movies that have just like been my heroes growing up. He was one of them. Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter was another one. Robert Englund as Freddy, of course. And Louis Jordan was another big bad guy for me that I thought this was just the fucking bee's knees of bad guys in Swamp Thing. The guy that plays Arcane, gave me the idea, the good bad guys, those are the guys that always have those elegant places. He's playing piano. He's smart, but still charismatic. Now, Durant is none of those things, but he does have that psychosis that does make him a little bit more fun to watch. He's definitely one of my favorite film bad guys of all time. For a quote unquote small of a film as Darkman was or Swamp Thing was, these bad guys, these actors stand out as phenomenal and really make the movie. Your hero is only good as his villain. So he's only as heroic as the other person is as sadistic.
Yeah.
And Durant, there's a lot to say. He's sick. He has no friendship. He has no empathy. He has no remorse. He has his job.
Pretty much.
And apparently not kids.
No, not kids. Well, this is the other thing that I didn't even realize until my rewatch for this episode, is that there's apparently a theory that Durant is supposed to be gay. And I think that it stems from the part in the diner where one of them is like, I know he likes Ricky, and then there's like he treats Ricky a little differently. Strack makes that joke about his wife died, and he thinks it's hilarious, as if like, Durant would never have a wife. So like now I'm wondering if that's a thing, like if that was what Raimi was trying to put in the movie, because if he did, it was so subtle that I never noticed it until now.
Maybe. I mean, that would make
it would Durant, make sense. Yeah,
that would make him the same type of psychopath or sociopath as Butterfield in Lord of Illusions.
Yeah,
or make him a similar type of character. I don't think it would damage if that was the case. I don't think that would hinder anything. It would make a little bit more sense to what you were saying as far as him being nicer to Rick. Yeah, because he doesn't have a thing for any ladies in the movie. He doesn't care about anything like that. Yeah, so maybe he is even in denial of his own sexuality, and that's part of why he's so detached from things. Or like, I don't know. It's an interesting. You don't really get a sense of who Durant is besides just running his business and collecting his money and throwing his henchmen out of windows and all of that stuff. So I just think that's an interesting sort of hint at what might be driving him psychologically, like what might be going on behind those that icy stare that he has. I don't know. A lot of times what I figure out for most bad guys is sometimes they just love what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could be that too.
So, I mean, Durant, they make a lot of references to paramilitary.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you see a lot of movies where those guys become mercenaries afterwards or go to crime just because that's what they know.
Yeah.
But he may also have other other issues.
Who knows? Just an interesting theory I came across, and I was wanted to run that by you. He might
be a self-loather. He might just have fetishes. We don't know.
We don't know. All of the above, possibly. I wanted to talk about. We got to mention the leg gun, which again is another very grindhousey, like kind of ridiculous, but in the best way idea. That one of Durant's, I think, is his name even Skip? I think his name is.
Are you talking about the guy that was in Wayne's World?
Is that? Oh, that is the guy from Wayne's World.
Yeah, that's Terry. No, not Terry.
Well, one of them guys.
Yeah.
There's one from Wayne's World, and then the other guy the actor is Dan Hicks. Is Skip is the one with the false leg.
Okay, so yes, that was Dan Hicks. I think he just passed away last month, I believe.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he lost a battle with cancer, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is another one of those so crazy it works ideas. Having a henchman with a false leg who just uses that to hide weapons, and then he's in the first scene he's hopping while they take the gun out. It's crazy, and the movie establishes right out the gate what kind of tone it's going for, and I love it.
Yeah, this is what you're in for. If you like James Bond gimmicks, this is for you. But no, it's true. Like the guy literally had a wooden leg. He just, most people carry booze in theirs. He happened to have an Uzi in his.
Yeah, it's just another day at the office for Skip.
Hobble. We cut it off.
I want to talk about also I guess we should get into like the third act, which, by the way, Darkman and his fedora, I have several fedoras. I'm a fedora guy. And I feel like Darkman might have been part of why I was like, that looks cool. Look at the way he's jumping around with that coat and that hat on. I love the whole third act, the whole attack on what I'm calling, again, the Dark Cave. We have all this mask work, which then Mission Impossible tries to do less thrillingly, I'd say, for the most part, just because this is kind of it's all mask stuff, like that whole attack on his lair and the way he turns them all against each other. What are kind of your thoughts on that whole sequence and leading into the helicopter thing?
That was the most fun for me.
Yeah.
That, and then that part again also reminded me the most of RoboCop, because they've got the same steel mill kind of hangout that they get attacked in, and the bad guys make the unfortunate mistake of saying, "Oh, let's go get him in his own place." Mm-hmm. You don't want to go get a superhero in his own place. It never works out good for anybody. General Zod, nobody. I loved it. I loved the turning each other against one another, shooting at them because they see Peyton and they pull the mask off, and oh shit, there's his buddy. And then again, the guy from Wayne's World, where he finally buys it, it's with the bobbing head or the bobbing bird over the lighter with their leaking gas, and that was just awesome for me. That makes the whole movie full circle for me when he finally kills him that way.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was just exciting, and I dug it. But do we know what happened to the cat?
I don't know. I would imagine the cat probably ran out when everything, all the noise and shooting started. But like, screw this, I'm bouncing. Good luck, Darkman.
I would have loved to see the cat just like reach out and get somebody's face, like, "That's my dad."
Yeah, exactly. I think the hologram, that you said with the little bird thing bouncing up and down on the lighter, the callback from the beginning of the movie. I think that's another indication of how much he's changed. Like, not only is Westlake taking these guys out, he's enjoying it, and he is like fucking with them on purpose. And that's again sort of the revenge fantasy part of it, where in the first one he goes after is Rick, and he says, "I told you everything you wanted," and he's like, "I know you did, but let's pretend you didn't." And you get that great the great as in disturbing in a way, but also
that was
in a different way.
Favorite scene in the whole movie. Favorite quote, favorite scene. The puppet of Ivan Reitman was fantastic. The way the jaw was just permanently
Yeah, I love that. That image is burned into my head. So when you see that lighter callback from the beginning of the movie, you're like, oh man, Darkman is just like full on, like he what a rascal that Darkman is, basically, is kind of where it's going. That he develops sort of a perverse sense of humor about it all. And I think that's really fun, how much that contrasts with the sort of mild-mannered, kind of soft-spoken, like, scientist he was at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. Well, hell, if you thought he was a prankster to him, they should talk about the pranks that he pulled on his wife before he turned. He was a pain in the ass then. No, they're fun. And that those jokes, I mean, you would kind of have to assume, okay, if you're going that crazy, kind of like the Joker, yeah, you make the best out of just about everything that you're doing, or at least find some sense of pleasure or justification in it. But I think you start to finally see his pain lessen the more he enjoys it. Mm-hmm. You see more of Peyton's pain lessen towards the end, and I like that. I mean, it sucks. Yeah, he's alone. He's walking off Bruce Banner style.
I feel like you get a little, and it might just be the burnt face part of it that's triggering this, but you get a little bit, like, he almost becomes like a vigilante Freddy Krueger towards the end there, and I think that's that in and of itself already. Like, I want to see more of that. Just him kind of turning that on the criminal element, and it really is kind of a perfect blend of the vigilante justice of Batman, the disfigurement of, like, the Phantom of the Opera, and sort of the sick sense of humor of someone like Freddy Krueger. And I think that's, you see, that's the part, like you said, that's where he starts to really lean into it. He's like, I got these fuckers now locked down. They're in my place where I have a bazillion masks. So there's lots of options here. Like you said, they come to his home on his turf. Not a smart move. And I love that part of it, that you really play the big good and evil part of it, like the grand scale of that kind of showdown in the third act. So it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I just remembered my derailment. Thank you.
Go for it.
The more you get into that third act, the less you see Peyton being in pain, other than having to leave Julie. You see him becoming more comfortable with who he currently is. And I think that's one of the things that makes that scene where he's fucking with everybody so much fun, is because deep down, he is having fun with them. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, maybe that just kind of rubs off in an audience participation sort of way.
Yeah. I mean, he says at the end, Strack is like, oh, you can't kill me. You don't have it in you, or whatever. And he lets him go. He says, I'm learning to live with a lot of things. It's sort of in a weird, like, it's a very, and I mean this as a compliment, it's a very strange and bizarre movie in a lot of ways, but ultimately it's also sort of uplifting at the end, in that he does come to terms with who he is. It's sort of a coming of age story in a way, of him becoming from a good, air quotes, normal scientist, with a normal life, with his girlfriend and all that other stuff, whatever normal means according to the movie, and just realizing that, nope, that's not my destiny. I'm going to stop yearning for that so much, and I'm just going to try and make the best of what where I am and what I'm capable of as Darkman, essentially.
Yeah. He's without Julie, he's not Peyton, and he can't have that. So he figures that out by the end, and that's why he leaves and puts the last mask on, or the last shimp, as it were. Mm-hmm. Going back to what you'd said, as far as if they would continue that now, I think it's a perfect lead in. You have your establishment origin story. Mm-hmm. You've seen him be that person, and he's always going to be Peyton to a point, but there's still a lot more room now with the finale of the third act for Darkman to be just Darkman, or to grow as Darkman. Apparently,
Raimi, I guess, wanted Bruce Campbell as Darkman. How do you think that movie would have worked, or how it would have played differently?
I think it would have been the same.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that a lot of the other picks that they'd chosen instead of Liam Neeson would have been as good, but I love Bruce Campbell every bit as much as you or the next guy. I love him as much as Liam Neeson. I think for the way he knows how Sam thinks and works and what Sam wants, I think he would have delivered that part okay.
Right.
Other actors not knowing Sam or not having a professional background like Liam Neeson does, I don't see it having gone as well. Bruce Campbell is somebody I always want to see more of.
Yeah. So I wonder if they were, and you know, as we're kind of winding down, if they were to continue this, do you have, I mean, obviously, I think we both agree we would want it to more or less pick up pretty much right after this movie. Just do what every studio is doing with every franchise now and being like, yep, all those other things, any straight to video sequels or whatever that came after doesn't count. We're picking up from the OG. Halloween, Terminator tried to do something like that. There's all these rumors about Alien might do that too. So there's RoboCop at some point was supposed to. I don't even know if that's happening anymore.
Oh no.
Who would you want to see playing Darkman? Because here we had Liam Neeson, Bruce Campbell for 2 seconds. In the straight-to-video sequels, we had Arnold Vosloo, which is random, as Westlake. Any idea on who you'd like to see in that role?
Oh, gosh. Maybe Stephen Amell?
I could see that. I think he could pull that off.
He's got darkness. I mean, he pulled that off really well in Arrow. I don't know about his voice, but I think he has the musculature and the physicality to do a heck of a lot more in superhero movies than what we already saw in Arrow. Mm-hmm. I think he could do a lot of the stunts that Darkman would require, because Darkman gets fucked up left and right. That's his superpower, just like Wolverine.
Right.
I didn't feel it.
Well, there's that and towards the end of the movie, he gets like that bolt shot through his hand on the steel beam, and even as a kid, I was like, "Oh Jesus!" He just like pulls right off of it. Oof, it's rough.
But I don't know about any other current actors right now that could pull that off. Like, you want to look at it in the sense of like, okay, who was a good Batman or who would be a good Batman?
Right.
I haven't seen a good Batman. I mean, I take shit for it all the time. I really liked Ben Affleck as Batman. I'll go to my grave with that one. I thought he was a good Batman. But prior to that, I don't think that there was a good Batman movie since '89.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see all these other people playing Batman, and you're just like, either A, they were an okay Batman, or B, they were a good Bruce Wayne, but they're never a whole package. So it's hard to say, if you can't figure out someone to play a good Batman, how can you find someone to play a good Darkman? Because Darkman, when he takes off his mask, is still essentially wearing a mask. It's got to be somebody that could express that emotion with their eyes and their voice, like Liam Neeson could.
Right. Yeah. Well, hopefully, I would like to see that happen. I mean, we've already seen Raimi continue Evil Dead as a TV show. I think Darkman would be a great limited series for one of the 6 million streaming services, and then you wouldn't have to worry about, we got to cut it down for whatever rating so we can release it theatrically. I feel like if it's going to happen, that would be the way it would happen. So I would be down for that. I think this movie is beloved by people like us, but a lot of people are probably still aren't familiar with it. You know, if you're not into the genre, you might have blown right past Darkman. But if you've seen it, odds are you love it, and it's a huge part of your upbringing as a cinephile. And you know, I don't know if it's because now realizing the marketing with the Who is Darkman thing. Now I'm wondering, because my dad, we used to watch things. And he used to, at the end, when you know, especially something like this, where it ends like, I am Darkman. He used to be like, I am Darkman. And then it became like everything, I am, you know, whatever the movie was afterwards. Like you get that, like adrenaline rush from a movie. And that was Darkman. Like this was, in a rotation in my house with the '89 Batman and other movies like that, with Dick Tracy, a lot of those early 90s comic booky movies. And I feel like, it needs to be discovered, and probably the best way in this day and age for people to discover this movie who haven't seen it is to do something new, like a limited series that picks up where the movie leaves off or something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it would be great if they did Darkman in the same way that they did Daredevil or Punisher. It would be
exactly.
Swell.
Exactly.
You know, give him the leeway to tell a story that he likes to tell, like he did with Ash versus Evil Dead, and you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, I think so. So we'll see.
Except for that last episode, but whatever.
Of Ash versus Evil Dead?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I think we're just thankful that we got any more of Bruce Campbell as Ash at that point. But that's a really fun show. I mean, I've already talked to Jeff Johnson about doing an episode on Ash vs. Evil Dead of this show. So we're going to do that at some point. So that I'm looking forward to going back and revisiting that. That's just going to take more time commitment because I want to go back and rewatch the series, but thankfully it's pretty fast watch. But is there anything else about Darkman we haven't covered that you wanted to make sure we mentioned before we start winding down?
I think we've actually covered it all.
I think we did a pretty good job. Yeah.
We got the Uzi leg. We got Bruce important. Campbell. We got Rick's death, which was the most important part. Durant, Strack. Oh, wait. The Hong Kong exchange. That was dope. Where Peyton has to, pretend to be Durant under distress and basically comes up with the idea, you have until I smoke this cigar to come up with my money or it's your ass. And he cuts the cigar down by like 90%.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh, dude, that's a dad move right there. You got the count of 3.
It totally is. I also, since we're just kind of pointing out random moments now, I love when Paulie wakes up in bed and they're like, Paulie, wake up. And he's like, I don't even know how I got dressed. And he's like bawling, about like sobbing because he knows what's about to happen. I love that. The Durant and his gang every one of them are just really fun to watch. And it's just, you don't get a lot of time with them, but what you do get is always very satisfying.
Yes. I like them more than Clarence Boddicker's gang.
Right.
And I like them a lot. So, but yeah, they're fun. Like the bad guys always make the best part of the movie, especially when it comes to humor, because it's that violent irony that we used to love in the 90s.
Right. Yeah, right.
No, but this is a shining gem. I want to see it come back. I want to see it have more recognition from young people now. Maybe a great Blu-ray intent Shout Factory. And then just let it see where it could ride, because Darkman's a story that still has a lot more to tell.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. Well, let's hope we see that. Kevin Smith, can you tell people where they can find you on social media?
You could find me on Twitter at KCS Kevin Smith. And you could also follow us at MST3K Motivation on Facebook and Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to talk about Darkman. I think I forget how this even came up in some kind of Facebook conversation. And I was just like, we should talk about Darkman. And you were like, yes.
Because I think we're both giant man children who like the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about a movie that I fell in love with, that came out 30 years ago. Actually, this is the 30th anniversary. So that was not intentional, but
oh gosh, it is.
Yeah.
Look, there's in my camera. There's another gray hair. Look at that right there. Hey, buddy.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm responsible for pointing it out now, so that one's on me. But we definitely need to have you back at some point to talk about something else in this genre or whatever. But we'll definitely figure something else out. So thanks. Thank you for coming on the show, Kevin. This was a blast.
Thank you very much for having me, Robert.
If you're interested in joining me on the show to chat about one of your favorite films, head on over to crookedtable.com/guest. Or you can consider supporting the show at patreon.com/crookedtable. Of course, you can always find more podcasts, reviews, videos, and other movie-related goodies over at crookedtable.com. Until next time, this has been the Crooked Table Podcast, and I've been Rob.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
CR-O-O-K-E-D.